let's go through the issues real quick. I know we're running out of time, but what I want to do is pick an issue of importance to the Democrats, ask you your position on that, and then an issue important. So the first issue, we talked about abortion just now. Issue of importance to the Democrats, social programs, spending. What are your thoughts around government spending? Where should the government be on its spending for its citizens, forgetting defense spending and all of that?
Well, I mean, that's a broad category. Mm-hmm. So I think what we ought to be, that the cuts that I'm going to make, because I want to get as close to a balanced budget as possible, the cuts that I'm going to make are going to be cuts in the military budget, which we were told after 1992 was going to go from $600 billion to $200 billion. Instead, it's gone to $1.3 trillion. We can protect our country. We can arm ourselves the teeth at home, protect the sea lanes, protect neutral areas like the Antarctic, have a strike capacity around the globe in 2 theaters, and we can do it for $500 billion a year. We don't need, what we're doing. So that's a big saving. The other big savings I'm going to do is I'm going to affect is in chronic disease. I'm going to end the chronic disease epidemic, which is the biggest cost, $4.3 trillion a year. When my uncle was president, only 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60% do. And, we're all seeing, particularly in the black community, diabetes, these autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, all these exotic autoimmune diseases.
Where are they coming from? Is it pharmaceuticals?
They're coming from let me say this first. The Congress said to EPA, tell us what year the autism epidemic began. We went from 1 in 10,000, I don't know how old you are. I'm
25.
I too, yeah. So,
you're what, 30?
Yeah. I turned 70 next week.
God bless you.
And I didn't do it. I didn't do anyway, so in my generation, the autism rate is 1 in 10,000. I'm talking about full-blown autism, nonverbal, non-toilet trained, stimming, hand flapping, toe walking, all head banging. In my children's generations, 1 in every 34 children, 1 in every 22 boys. What happened? That's an environmental toxin. It's not, genes don't cause epidemics.
Right.
And when Congress said to EPA, tell us what year it began, they said it's a red line, 1989. 1989, all of these diseases started. So you had the obesity went from 13% when my uncle was president to 42% of kids today, 75% of are overweight. The allergy epidemic, so peanut allergies suddenly appeared. I had 11 siblings, 70 first cousins. I never knew anybody with a peanut allergy. Why do my 5 of my 7 kids have allergies, anaphylactic allergies? Eczema suddenly appeared. All these asthma. My brother had asthma, and he was told by his doctor there'll never be a cure for asthma because it's so rare, nobody will ever study it. Today, 1 out of every 8 black children has asthma. What happened? So, and then, neurological diseases, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics. Never heard of anybody with tics. Tourette's syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism, all exploded in 1989. Why did that happen? Well, there's a number of suspects. You have to find a toxin that became ubiquitous in 1989 that affects every demographic from Cubans in Key Biscayne to Inuit in Alaska. Right. And that affects boys with neurological injuries at a 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 ratio to girls. So there's only a small category of things that do that. And one is glyphosate, pesticides, neonicotinoids, atrazine. These are pesticides, PFOAs, which are the forever chemicals that were put out those years in all of our children's pajamas, all of our furniture. So we're breathing them right now. They're in the water in almost every city. High fructose corn syrup was introduced that period. And cell phone radiation and a number of other things. And some of them are strong subjects. It's probably a cumulative. And then the vaccine schedule went from the 3 vaccines I took as a kid to the 72 that are required now. And if you look at those vaccines, the manufacturer's insert lists all those diseases as side effects. So they have to be a subject, but it's probably accumulation of many of these because these toxics all operate on similar biological pathways. Why has not NIH never studied that question? It's the biggest question. We have the highest death rate.
Why do you think they haven't? I mean,
because they're scared. Any answer to that question is going to harm the mercantile interests of some big industry, either big food, big ag, big oil, big chemical, or big pharma.
Right.
So they don't want to know the answer. And if you try to study it, your career will be over. That's very well documented. The scientists that try to do these kind of studies just are their career enders, so nobody will study it. And as soon as I get in there, I'm going to identify, I'm going to go down to NIH my first week, and I'm going to say, you know what you're doing now, which is right now NIH, the principal job is to develop new drugs for the pharmaceutical industry to treat these diseases.
And to sell it back to the consumer.
Yeah.
That was developed on our tax dollars.
Yeah. Exactly. So the Moderna vaccine is 50% owned by NIH. NIH collects 50% of royalties, tens of billions of dollars. There are 6 scientists at NIH who make $150,000 forever, a year, forever. So they're paying for their boats, their schools, everything. And of course, they're the ones who are supposed to be finding problems with the product. Right. And the regulatory function is completely subsumed by their commercial ambitions. And so, during COVID, we had the highest death rate of any country on earth. We have 16% of the COVID deaths in our country, and we only have 4.2% of the global population. Why did that happen? Why isn't anybody answering that? Blacks in our country were dying at a rate of 3,000 per million population. Blacks in Haiti died at 14 per million population. So 1/200th of our death rate in the poorest country in the hemisphere. Nigeria,
Hardly
the death rate was 14 per
Right.
million population, 1/200th. On average, African countries had 1/10 our death rate. Why was that happening? Part of it is total
healthier
mismanagement.
population.
And part of it is we have the highest chronic disease rate in the world. And CDC said that the average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. So they had diabetes, which is a black disease.
Right.
They had obesity, which is increasingly a black disease. They had asthma, which is a black disease. And then, there are other reasons too.